Well, hello, folks. As you come on board, it's still pretty balmy here in central Illinois. Some folks walking outside without coats on as they're leaving the building. But we will wait for just a couple of minutes to get started here right at 4 o'clock with Lindsay Metcalf, author of the new book, Tomatoes on Trial. So give us just a couple of minutes. So, And folks, as we get a couple more coming on, we are recording this. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. Tomatoes on Trial and Lindsay Metcalf. Something to look at and get ordered and have somebody deliver to you this cold weekend. So you can have that or check out your local bookstore. I'm sure it's there as well. This is the hard part, Lindsay. I don't do well with wait time, so I never did when I was a
I know.
teacher
I'm like,
either. I like to have background or something. So,
yeah,
but
when I do school visits, I'm usually asking kids right now if they are on team fruit or team vegetable. So all of you who are waiting, think about whether you think a tomato is a fruit or a vegetable, I guess.
And remember, you are on a webinar, so you're going to put that in your chat. So if you have questions for Lindsay, have questions about what we're talking about, go ahead and drop those in the chat. But we will, yeah, think about if you are team fruit or team vegetable. So it's something else. And I don't know if those of you noticed, but we will be discussing. I feel severely underdressed. I did not get the tomato dress memo. So dress like a tomato.
I know I've got this nice little beret, and you probably can't tell on the screen, but my sweater is full of tomatoes and probably dog hair too.
Well, and it looks like Frog and Toad on your
Oh
t-shirt.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
I
Frog?
just went ahead and wore the whole school visit outfit. So
You got all of
yeah.
it. Exactly. Exactly. Well, folks, it is 4 o'clock. Welcome. We're glad you're here. We're going to get started. Anybody that joins us and watches the recording later, that's awesome too. But we are excited to have Lindsay Metcalf with us, author of the recently released Tomatoes on Trial. And I don't know. Have you heard the word tariff lately? Has anybody talked about the word? I mean, you couldn't have. I mean, not that you wanted things to go this way or anything, but tariffs and Supreme Court in the news, I mean, it's everywhere, Talk about how that pairs right in with your book. But before we get there, why don't you give us a little bit of background? Because I find your background just fascinating, your journey to being a children's book author.
Well, thank you. So I'm here in Kansas, North Central region, rural town of Concordia, population about 5,500. And this is a town where I grew up on a farm just outside of town.
What
Um,
kind of farm? That's an important question. Are you wheat farmers? What kind of farm were your
the
parents?
the same kind of farm everyone has around here, pretty much wheat, corn, soybeans, Milo or grain sorghum. Um, my dad is almost 80 and still works on the farm, and both my brothers help farm. So I do not farm. I am the only person who does not, but I get called when it's time to haul irrigation pipe in the summer. So we're close enough that we are still involved in that capacity. But yeah, I grew up on the farm in the 80s, um, during the farm crisis. I knew that we didn't have a lot of money, but that was about as much as I knew about what was going on the farm. Then I graduated high school in 2000 and wanted to get as far away from my hometown as possible, but still close enough to visit my parents. So I went to school at the University of Kansas and got a journalism degree. I discovered that I was pretty good at writing, I guess, and thought that that was the natural progression of that um, path in life because I didn't know that being an author was possible living in Kansas. So went to journalism school, got a job at the Kansas City Star newspaper, lived in Kansas City for a number of years, and then we had two kids, my husband and I, within 17 months of each other, and I decided I would like to stay home with them. So started reading a bunch of children's books to them, and long story short, here we are.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the things that I see throughout your books, and I read a number of them, that journalism aspect really does come through. You see, yeah, I see it anyway. But you started out, you're talking about, having the kids back to back. 2020 was a big year for a lot of people, but for you, it was a little bit different because you had two books come in. You had both Farmers Unite. Oh, you had three. Sorry, and no salt was no was that
No
one?
voice too small.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I had that down as so you had three books come out all at once. I thought this was a year later. So, but you
Yeah.
had three books come out. How does that happen?
It was weird.
I mean, yeah, 2020 was weird, but then let's just throw that in because it takes it. You
it,
didn't just on January 1st get these contracts for 2020. This has been
no,
in the making. Yeah, talk about
yeah,
that.
it had been staggered. So I started writing children's books in about 2015, and it took me a few years to really get in my rhythm. Got an agent in 2017, and then she sold the first book in 2018.
And
And
which one was first then?
that was No Voice Too Small, the poetry anthology about contemporary young activists. Um, so I'm working away on that. She's also got other things on submission. Then we sell Beatrix Potter's Scientist, I believe. That was a picture book biography about Beatrix Potter. I think we sold that in maybe it was before No Voice Too Small. It was right around the same time, like late 2017, early 2018. And then late 2018, early 2019, we sold Farmers Unite, planting a protest for fair prices. So they were all written at different times, sold at different times, but they came out all in fall of 2020. And of course, as I was preparing for this, I was getting all excited, and I got to be part of a debut group of authors. We're all learning together and helping each other. And then pandemic hits, and we're like, we don't know how to market our books anyway. So what do we do now? But it actually wasn't too bad because everybody was online at the same time. And so I had an opportunity to attend virtual conferences all over the country, whereas maybe I wouldn't have reached those audiences otherwise. And so I kind of found my footing in that way. But yeah, Farmers Unite, which was my first ag focused book, that came out the week after the election in 2020. So I was worried that it would not find its audience, but it's been a slow burn, but it is finding people.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that one because I totally see the journalist in you in this book. And you want to describe the book a little bit? Now, I'm a little older. I totally remember when the farmers drove their tractors to Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
So, why don't you explain this book just a little bit?
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna grab it. Excuse me for a second while I almost fall out of my chair. Um, it is the story of the American agriculture movement protests from the late 70s, early 80s. Um, I got the idea because there was a local event here in Concordia called Prairie Plowing Days. Um, this farmer has a huge collection of steam tractors and he just wanted to do a demonstration. So he invited a few friends to bring their antique tractors too, and they did a whole day of it. And I did not actually attend this event, but my dad did. Sends me a picture of a 1940s tractor with like a jerry-rigged cab on top of it and this huge sign on the back. So it's this rickety old tractor with a sign that says Washington, D.C. or busted. And these things did not reconcile in my brain. I'm like, how did this old tractor that probably can't go more than 10 or 15 miles an hour, how did that get to DC? Why? And all of this. And so I said, well, what's that story about, Dad? And he goes, oh, I think it was some protest or something. And like I said, I grew up in the 80s, had no knowledge of the American agriculture movement. I was little when all of this happened. So I start Googling like anyone would do. And I found some oral histories that were done by a small town library in Kansas. And they were talking to people who had driven their tractors across the country in the winter of 78 into 79. Um, they were confronting snowstorms. There were these stories of huge snowstorms in Illinois where they had to park tractors, but first they had to clear the track where they were parking tractors and all this stuff. But they were trying to get attention to the beginning of the farm crisis where people were starting to lose their farms and they didn't feel that the person in the presidency, who was Jimmy Carter, a farmer, was paying enough attention or hearing their plight. So they decided they were all going to be in DC at the same time. And they ended up camping on the National Mall, and it was a whole thing. And
But
then,
during a huge snowstorm as well. And these
yeah,
tractors in DC actually help pave the way and drag people out of ditches, and it was something else. Yeah. So,
yeah, I'm trying to find pictures of that. Yeah, there were police on snowmobiles, and um, it was a really, yeah, here's a tractor towing a car. So this is told with my words and archival photographs. And yeah, the whole timeline feeds into Farm Aid of 85, which I didn't realize when I first started writing the story. But yeah, I thought it was an important story to tell for young people specifically because I grew up on a farm. I didn't see books about kids like me or families like mine growing up. And what did I do? I wanted to leave when I grew up. And I thought it was important to tell stories like this because it shows real people, real situations, not cartoonified. There's no old MacDonald in here. And um, it was a story that happened during my lifetime that I had no knowledge of. So I thought it was important to tell the farmer's side of the story.
so I remember getting this book during the pandemic, during the things were shut down. I get this book and I'm like, I was sharing with folks on my staff, and I'm like, I remember this. I'm old enough. I remember the snow. I remember the farmers. There were a couple from Illinois that were very active in this as well. And then of
Mhm.
course Farm Aid. I'm old enough to. I attended the first Farm Aid conference at the University of Illinois Memorial Stadium, that kind of thing. But that aspect of uh, protesting and peaceful protesting and making sure other people see the plight. My point with this is for everyone else, great book, get it. It pairs perfectly with Tomatoes on Trial just because an ag thing in the news that you might not hear about things that are going on. So I think that goes really, really well with it. And from Lindsay's perspective, told with a great journalistic aspect. It is an easy read, and sorry, nothing against major metro newspapers, but you're still writing at that fourth or fifth grade level, subject, verb, object. Here are the facts, that type of thing. So it does make a lot of sense, but very, very well written. Highly encourage this. I had this as your first book, just when it came up, and then to Beatrix Potter, same type of thing. And here you are saying I've got them in the wrong order, but let's talk a little bit about Beatrix Potter and what we all know her from. We all know her from her bedtime stories and Peter Rabbit, but
Yeah.
you've dug in and got more of the story here of her as a scientist. Explain that to us.
So I just saw a blog post about her 10-year period as an obsessive amateur mycologist. She was drawing scientific drawings of mushrooms and fungi and really got into identifying them. And this really blew my mind because as a kid, I was reading her books, but didn't know anything about her as a person. Couldn't even tell you what she looked like. I just, could picture her name in all caps across the top of a book, right? So this immediately began to show me that she is this three-dimensional human with lots of different interests and just kind of dug in and went down the rabbit hole of research. What was really cool about researching that story is she had written a diary in code because her parents, they were wealthy, but they were sort of overbearing, and she was expected to stay home until she got married. So she was like, an adult and far into adulthood before she even left home. And she just didn't want them to know her daily thoughts. So she created a letter for letter substitution code and wrote for 14 years in this code. And then somebody else came along in, I don't know, 50s, 60s maybe. His name was Leslie Linder. He cracked the code and translated the journal. And you can, if you have some days and some extra time, maybe with a snowstorm coming up, you can read her journal too. It's called the Diary of, or the Journal of Beatrix Potter. I don't know, the years, whatever they are. But yeah, it was like having tea with her every day and gossiping about all of the people in her sphere of London. So,
So I just think that the start of these two stories, you see a blog post and it intrigues you. You see something and you ask your dad about it, and it's an offhanded comment that you had to do a little more digging. I think that those are just there are stories everywhere that people can find, and and you're able to use that journalistic technique, that writing technique to draw them in. Okay, but then this was my stretch. I'm like, okay, I see the journalism in this when you're interviewing our 14 young Americans making history, but then there's poems too. And you wrote one, and it's a forward backwards poem. So tell us a little bit about No Voice Too Small.
so in my mind, it makes sense. Um,
Good.
no, so I was writing at the time when No Voice Too Small had its genesis. I was working on this book, so I was thinking of protests. And there were lots of big protests happening in the country. I think it was around the time of the school shooting in Florida, and students were protesting everywhere. And so I was thinking like, should this book was not selling, by the way. And I was like, I really want this story to get out there. So do I need to reframe it in a different way? Do I need to talk about different protests through history and how there's many different ways to do it and yada, yada, yada. Then I linked up with a couple of authors. Their names are on the cover of that book, Jeanette Bradley and Keela Dawson.
Mhm.
And we started thinking about how kids can use their voices and make a difference. Jeanette's daughter at the time, I think she was 6 or 7, and they had been reading a lot of picture book biographies, sort of like the Beatrix Potter one. And her daughter said something to the effect of, I wish I had lived in the past so that I could make a difference in the world. And we realized that you don't have to have lived in the past. You just have to be brave enough to use your voice. So we wanted to bring in lots of voices to that book. We wanted to have anybody be able to pick it up and, sort of see themselves in one of the stories. And in order to do that, we wanted to bring in lots of different voices. And we thought poetry would be a good way to approach it because each of those kids' stories is emotional at its core, and poems really capture that emotion. And so that's how that went. And for me, writing a picture book is always like writing a poem because it's like putting puzzle pieces together and using lots of lyricism and um, you know, thinking about each word and does it matter and does it fit into the storyline. And so writing poems is not all that different for me.
Well, I just was assuming the actual information about each student. Were you the writer of that, or I mean, I know there was
All three
editing
of
going
us
on.
did. Yeah, Keela and
Yeah,
Jeanette and I. Yeah.
yeah. So, but just there's lyricism even in that, and just the facts plus making it more palatable. Boiling it down so everybody gets the same paragraph. Word count's got to be really important, and you got some longer poems, but everybody's word count in each paragraph is very very close. And how do you tell somebody's whole story in just a certain number of words? So that's really intriguing to me, and I really see it in that. But again, your poem, the poem that you wrote was the uh, Amplify. So it's a reverse poem, though. Tell us a little bit about Amplify.
We were just trying to come up with an introduction for the book, and we were talking about spheres of influence. So, you can use your voice in your community, and then there's your your state or your, let's see, there's you and then your school and your community and your state and your country and then the world. And so we were talking about the ripple effects of these and getting other people involved. And then it all comes back to you staying involved. So it's a reverso poem where the first half reads in one way and the second half uses the same words in the reverse order and you get a different meaning.
Exactly. Just fascinating. And, and it really does introduce these children, these youngsters, young adults in a unique way, talking about how protest, they are protesting, they are making history, they are standing up. But, some people are talking about skin cancers. I mean, it's not necessarily big there are some people doing bigger things, but others that are just trying to share their story and get it out there. And there's something impactful about a youth, a student. We see that in agriculture. You can have all the adults you want stand up there, but you get an FFA kid stand up there and talk about something, or a 4-H kid, all of a sudden people are paying attention, because
Absolutely.
somebody's
There's one
passionate.
person in the book that we feature. Her name's Marley Dias, and I always use her quote. It's about taking your talent plus your passion and putting them together in a way that will just make magic and you can make a difference in your own unique way.
In your own unique way. And nothing says unique way like wearing a tomato beret. So there you go. Well, let's skip ahead to another one. This also has a farm concept, but outdoor farm, indoor farm. A little different than I'm guessing your Kansas farm upbringing. So what's the genesis of outdoor farm, indoor farm?
Well, as you can tell, I follow my curiosity. So I had seen a video of Aero Farms warehouse in New Jersey. And it's a vertical farm, plant factory, this massive warehouse where you have trays upon trays upon trays stacked to the ceiling of greens growing under LEDs. And I know you have these in Illinois. They're becoming more popular. It was an aeroponic farm. I was not familiar with this concept, and so started Googling, started watching lots of videos, and I just wanted to explore that more for myself to learn about it. But also, there was a little writing contest online, just like a little prompt that it was writing a story in 50 words or less. And I thought, well, I just came up with this idea. Why not pair it with outdoor farms and see how we can make a very simple story for younger kids about outdoor farms and indoor farms and how they share, um, lots of traits. So that's how it started. I wrote it for Vivian Kirkfield's 50 Precious Words contest. Did not win the, the contest, but decided I really liked the concept and so kept working on it. And it ended up being 110 words when I turned it in. So I included outdoor farms like the one I grew up on because that's what I could speak to. But it also became a story about sustainability in general and how agriculture confronts climate change with innovation and technology. And it all distills into this very simply told story with rhyme, which is
And
probably the hardest book I've ever written because it's nonfiction in rhyme.
and rhyme. And I just think it had to be interesting. Hopefully, you talked about this over Thanksgiving dinner with your farmer father and brothers and talking about those differences, because sometimes in agriculture, you know one thing, and it's sometimes hard to bring in new concepts wherever we're at.
Yeah.
We like innovation slowly, but this is literally indoor farms steer to the store, outdoor farms crank and pour, savor in the wind, just like all the differences. What about some of those, again, like you said, growing up in Kansas and exploring those things? Now, it probably would have been better to be able to go to jolly old England and research things with Beatrix Potter versus just Googling it. But you are able to do most of your research online or with local archivists and libraries. How do you do your research on that? Like you were talking about with the indoor farm aspect. Did you visit one in Kansas or locally?
I wasn't able to because I had pretty young kids at the time, and so I couldn't travel very much. But fortunately, there were a lot of videos that I could watch. Aero Farms in particular has a video that I have linked on my website right now, where I can't remember what type of video it's called, but you can actually click through to different areas and expand, and you can ride the elevator to the top and see the view from up there. And um, so I wish I had been able to go, and I still would like to go, but I haven't at that point. It
Well,
is important to do on location. Um, I call it reporting still, but research, which I did a lot of for my forthcoming novel that's coming out in February. But for that book, I wasn't able to.
well, and one other one I was going to ask about meeting or interviewing any of these students. Were you guys able to do that as well?
Yeah, in a few cases. Sometimes we had one poet paired with each young activist, and some of them did get together and meet. Um, I had written about Levi Draheim in that book. No, I didn't write it. I'm trying to remember now. It's been 6 years since this came out. I did meet with Levi and his mom, and there were a few others that we got to meet with. This is embarrassing. I'm trying to remember. Oh, this is the one I wrote. Noah Barnes, it has type 1 diabetes and walked all the way from
Oh,
Florida to
Washington State. Yeah.
Washington State up at the border with Canada. And I found out they actually walked through our part of Kansas. Didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, talked with him and his family. And so yeah, we did try to at least make contact with people, and we wanted them to have a say in their stories. We did, especially since some of them were still minors. We did not want to exploit anyone. Um, so there was a lot of involvement there.
Right, right. And so that kind of takes us up to, you've got a couple other books out there, but that kind of takes us up to Tomatoes on Trial. And let's help me with the background and where you started with this. What piqued your interest? What Google form were you looking at when you decided Tomatoes on Trial was it?
It was just Facebook. I mean, these are all so boring when I distill it down to this. It was just Facebook. Somebody had posted a meme about the anniversary of the 1893 Supreme Court case where tomatoes were declared a vegetable. And once again, my jaw dropped, and I thought, why on earth would they rule on this? This is ridiculous. And number two, a vegetable? Come on. So I started a deep dive into research for that one because there weren't any books about it. You could access the court opinion and details about the case, but the people that had brought the case, there was not much out there. So I had to get into archives and just finding whatever I could about them.
Well, so for folks that aren't familiar, the Tomatoes on Trial recently released. It dropped last fall, and how when did you submit this? When did you write it? How long did it take to get to the publishing part?
I was writing it in 2021, so I remember it was the pandemic was waning, and I was able to go on a writing retreat. So we had just been through COVID, and I had also just written this very, very heavy journalism story for a magazine, and I just wanted something simple and fun. So I had this idea, I took it to the writing retreat, and I just made a list of puns, food puns, and and tried to make an interesting story out of it. And so I was writing in 2021, way before tariffs were a thing, and I was trying to write around that topic because no one was going to know what they were.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't really write around it because the case was based on a tariff. It was the 1883, what was it called? 1883 Tariff Act, the Tariff Act of 1883. So I briefly describe why they would have this and why it affected the case. It was because the produce merchant, John Nix, had gone to Bermuda and brought back a boatload of tomatoes, and he was expecting them to be declared
Tariff free. Mhm.
tariff free. And in the Tariff Act of 1883, it wasn't like we have now where you have a tariff on one country. It was very specific items, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, we're talking, I put a few of them in the art. You can see that things that were taxed, vegetables, most of them, sugar, candy, chocolate, cheese, milk, molasses, things that were not taxed, fruit, leeches, barks, lichens, mosses. I mean, I just included some of the ridiculous things. But tomatoes, he thought were fruits. And then he gets to the port of New York and they say they're vegetables, which had a 10% tax. So hence the argument over whether they're a fruit or vegetable. And it rose up to the Supreme Court. And it was just such a perfect story for kids because the Supreme Court case was just based on word definitions of words. I mean, it was so simple. You had what I call team fruit, slinging these definitions, and then team vegetables like, well, what about these definitions? And then there, so I see this food fight in my mind. And then we get to the Trump presidency and tariffs are a thing. And I'm like, well, actually, we can talk about tariffs now. And so it's a really easy way to explain tariffs to kids. And you can talk about debate and how to be respectful. On my website, I have a mock trial toolkit, so you can stage your own mock trial for tomatoes. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it, but it's fun.
Well, and my part with the your aspect of this, you know, I think the Supreme Court and tariffs in the last 14 months they've done a perfect job of selling your book for you. So it's right there. But this whole whipping up jobs at home, the definition of tariffs to try and whip up jobs at home. I really see the journalistic aspect of it. And in the book, folks, those of you who haven't seen the book, phenomenal, just phenomenal back matter. I mean, you've got all the definitions, you've got all the players that are there, but your word choices, just some of them, like you bet your salt, or they were going to slide like butter, or they use horseradish as an exclamation. So there are all sorts of really cool food puns. Stiff as celery. I just see this from and actually I shared when I was promoting this, we had one of the teachers write back and say, "Oh, our FFA kids love the book," and they shared it with the second graders, and they made a list of food puns, and everybody was talking about these different food puns. So from kindergarten through adult, people can totally enjoy this book and learn something from it too, learn something from it as well. So I guess my thought for you is, could you, in your best author voice, in your tomato outfit, what is your favorite passage to share from this with students? If you'd share one of those with us. So
Oh yeah, well the food puns, we have a food fight whenever I do school visits, and it's not with real food. I have these fake snowballs that I had with my kids, and I just pass them out, and we choose whether we're on team vegetable or team fruit. And so I divide them into two, and the court case, when it starts, team fruit goes first. So I say, okay, team fruit, get ready. Whenever you have a definition, you're gonna throw one of your snowballs and you're gonna throw it at team vegetable. So they really get into it and it's fun to read. So we'll start there. The fruit versus vegetable question was about to be fleshed out in the highest court in the land. The plaintiffs lined up on team fruit. The defendants faced off on team vegetable. Ready, set, food fight! Team fruit fired the first blow. Tomatoes have seeds, so the dictionary calls them a fruit. Boom! They slung definition after definition. And then I go, you ready? Fruit, squish! And then they throw their snowball. And then it gives the definition here, so I just kind of glaze over it. The produce of a tree or other plant, the seed of plants, or the part that contains seeds. Vegetable, womp. Such plants are used for culinary purposes or are destined for feeding cattle and sheep. And then I say, do you think you should eat the same foods as cattle and sheep? And they go, maybe. And then we go tomatoes, splat, a garden plant and its fruit. And then we say, all right, on the count of three, we're going to say this together. One, two, three. Catch up, team vegetable. So it goes on like that, and then team vegetable gets their chance. Um, it's just fun to read aloud, and kids kind of get into it.
Well, and from an ag and a science perspective, the definition, what is the definition? So the definition, the fruit, it came from a flower. Tomatoes have, we see them in the garden, they have the flower, they have seeds inside of them, but they're classified as vegetables, and where does that come from? And again, took a Supreme Court case to decide this, and take a deep whiff, folks. It always comes back to money. Where does it come from? So
Yeah.
with that, though, one of the important pieces I find is the artwork is just phenomenal, and the artwork in this is by Edwin Foderingham, and he also did the artwork for one that we know we love, Full of Beans by Peggy
Oh yeah.
Thomas, Henry Ford and the soybean-based car, that type of thing. So just some phenomenal artwork. I like to talk about this with all the authors that we interview. How much did you work with your illustrator? Did you have much to do with him, or ever met him, or?
I've not met him. I've not spoken with him over the phone, just emailed a little bit. When I turned in my manuscript, so for those that don't know, if you don't do the illustrations, you just write the words and you try to quote unquote leave room for the illustrator. So you try to give them enough to inspire them, but let them have lots of leeway with the art. And so I wrote my words, turned in the manuscript, and I also had been doing a lot of research, and I had compiled a Pinterest page, a secret Pinterest page with image research that I have done. And so I sent that along to my editor. I said, this might be helpful for the illustrator. And so he used that. And then he said, well, could you make some notes about what you think the art should look like? Which I thought that's unusual because usually they don't want to know.
Mhm.
But so I made some notes, and that's when I suggested the food fight with the definitions being flung across the page. And that was pretty much the extent of our interactions. He just really knocked it out of the park. I mean, this is the image where I don't know if you can see it very well. There, Nix's steamship is going over to Bermuda, and you see the United States, and you see the Statue of Liberty in progress up here, and you see um, trucks, but they're trucks from the 1800s, so they're wagons with horses, and just so much richness in what he brought to the story in his research.
Right, right. Well, this is something our audience always wants to know. We do have a code word. Your evaluation, there'll be a code word. I've got 5 boxes of material, including a book, one of the books in there. We got to have a code word, and we got to have a code word. And our code word for you is, I always do this. So in the book, you say you are on team fruit, right? Are you team fruit or team vegetable? Sorry, I've got that mixed up now. Are
I
you
say team vegetable.
Yeah, you say you're vegetable, so I'm team fruit. I am team fruit. It's
Most
it
people
came
are.
it
Most
came
people are.
from a flower. It has seeds. It's a fruit.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite fruit, folks? This is important. You need this code word when you get your evaluation to win the book. Tell me your favorite fruit and why.
This is the tough one, but I'm gonna have to go with watermelon. And I think it's because it's just such a relief on a hot summer day. And I have such great memories as a kid eating those, eating down at the Rhine and having stuff drip all over and just feeling like complete bliss. So I
And
think that's why.
there you go. Did you have a garden growing up and grow watermelon too, or was it more of a go down to the local person who did have that?
My grandma did. My
There,
grandma did. Yeah. And
yeah.
I would help her a little bit.
So, folks, I email our authors before this, and I give them a slight script with some things, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to throw this. You can answer whatever you want. I don't care. It's a throwaway, but it's for you guys to do it. So the code word is watermelon. So you'll make sure you get that as part of the our evaluation when you do it to get your certificate and your evaluation and a chance to win the book. So, but yeah, I think how do students react when they say you're team vegetable? Where do they fall on it? Are they following the tariffs, or are they following our importers? Where do they typically fall? Fruit or
Most of
vegetable?
them are very solidly team fruit. And they get upset when I tell them I'm team vegetable. And then I say, that's the beauty of this because the law is no longer in effect. So the court case doesn't matter, and we can have a respectful debate about where we stand on whichever side.
Well, and you talk about in your back matter here how to debate, and you brought that up. You have that debate kit. How do you structure that during an author visit, and what do you see the students seeing now with that?
I haven't actually staged a mock trial myself, but I do have
Okay.
a mock trial toolkit that teachers can use in their classrooms, and I've been told that it is super fun and kids really, really get into it. Um, as for how we do it during my school visit, I have these printed up, just a few. And so if it's like a gymnasium full, I'll usually just have people raise their hands. I'm on team fruit, I'm on team vegetable. But if it's a smaller session, we'll get we'll pass these out. And we just go through the book. I usually ask them beforehand, do you think a tomato is a fruit or vegetable? And so I say, oh, okay, you're on team fruit. You're on team vegetable. And usually team fruit's way bigger, but team vegetable is more passionate. And so we go through and we read the definitions and we read the book. And at the end, we do a drum roll. And then we get to the page where it says, the fate of tomatoes lay on the table. Justice Horace Gray dished out the court's unanimous verdict, drum roll. And then I say vegetable, and they go, what? So, the court decided it was a vegetable because people eat tomatoes like vegetables in main courses instead of desserts. So it is controversial. It is benign, but yeah. Then we talk about how you can have this discussion over dinner with your family, or you can talk about it on the playground if you want, but you know, the how to debate section was a suggestion from one of my critique partners who is a school librarian. And she said, yeah, I can see kids. I mean, kids already have this debate, right? But if you lay out, how to research your side and also research the opposition side and then listen, and it's okay if you change your mind, that's just basic stuff that we all can learn from.
No, I mean, I think we could make illegal copies of this and send it to our representatives right now too. How to debate, research, research, research. Be respectful of each side. So,
Yeah.
just something that we can't overlook teaching students of any age, of any
Yeah.
age. So, with that, I got a question online, and Don, I'm going to get to you in a minute, but I want to get into something looking ahead because you've got one coming out in 2 weeks, and I am on the advanced order sheet, but you picked some topics that just haven't gone away. Our new book is Eunice Newton Foote. Your new book is Eunice Newton Foote and carbon dioxide and climate change. So, and Eunice Foote from the 90s. No, not the 1990s or the 2019 or anything, from 100 years ago. Tell us about your new book coming up, Footprints.
I really don't have any rhyme or reason to why I write the books that I write. I just follow what I'm curious about and what I can't stop thinking about. And so I had read a story about this woman named Eunice Newton Foote who discovered that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, although she didn't use that phrase because it didn't exist, in 1856. And she was the first person to discover this, but a man discovered it 3 years later, a man named John Tyndall, and he is considered the father of climate change. No one remembered Eunice Newton Foote until someone back in 2011 discovered one of her papers in an antique book. And he wrote a blog post about it. And then people started, kind of whispering about her online. And so in some circles, she's known now, but really not well because there has not been a traditionally published book put out about her yet. So I had written about climate change. We have another poetry anthology called No World Too Big about young climate activists from all over the world. And so I was kind of thinking in that space. And I just was fascinated by, again, the layers in her story. She was not only a scientist in the 1850s, but she lived in Seneca Falls, New York, which
Birthplace
was
of women's rights. Yeah.
women's rights. She attended that first women's rights convention in 1848, was friends with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Her family was intertwined with that family, and she helped publish the Declaration of Sentiments, which is what those women at the convention, that was their demands. You know, we should have the right to vote, we should have the right to be free, all of that. And then her husband is an attorney at the time. He rises through the ranks and becomes the US Patent Commissioner. So they're inventors. They have this rare egalitarian marriage where they're basically equals in the 1850s. They're both earning patents, and he becomes the patent commissioner. And the thing that fascinated me was that she's discovered climate change because she says carbon dioxide will heat up the atmosphere if there's a lot of it in the atmosphere. Um, she discovers this. She knows that it comes from burning fossil fuels, and yet he's approving all these patents for industrialization, for early fossil fuels. And so it's like this mixture of things happening all at the same time. It's like this, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not, I keep thinking crock pot, but it's not the word
Melting
I
pot.
want.
Yeah.
It's melting pot. Yeah, this cradle of
Mhm.
change. And so I just wanted to explore all of it. And the funny thing is, um, there are 3 books coming out about her in
Oh, wow.
February of this year. Fortunately, mine is not a picture book, which I thought about writing at first, but the other 2 are picture books. So,
Well, help us out though. Yours is a teen book, so it's a novel. How many? I mean, I'm going to compare it to a novel. How many pages is this compared to your 100-word outdoor farm, indoor farm? We're talking totally different writing styles.
yeah, it's a novel in verse. So it is total in
Oh, it's
poems.
totally in verse. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, so there's a lot of white space and there's a lot of back matter and bibliography and stuff. But I guess the main text is about 260 pages.
Wow.
But yeah, I did a lot of research. This one I did go on location. So I went all throughout upstate New York where she had lived and happened to be in DC for some school visits and got to go to the Smithsonian Institution archives and read her letters and her family's letters. Um, where else did I go? Yeah, just all throughout New York, I guess. Um, Dragged my kids to all of the women's rights historical sites, and they were not as excited as I was, but I was glad that I exposed my young boys to that. So yeah, that
Well,
comes out February 10th.
February 10th, it's coming out soon. And then in addition to that, you have another one coming out, No Brain the Same, coming out in June. Tell us a little bit about that one as well.
It's another poetry anthology in the vein of No Voice Too Small, No World Too Big. It's No Brain the Same, neurodivergent young activists shaping our future. So it's people whose brains work a little bit differently, but yet are still using their voices on a number of different topics. There's a girl who stutters but speaks up at a gun violence rally because she had lived through a school shooting. There's an autistic young man who starts a gaming community online to find community with other people who are similar to him. There's a non-speaking autistic man who creates a community online um, centered around art. So it's also told through poems, but it's those short snippets that I think are really cool to use in a classroom because you can do just 1 page a day if you want, or you can get through a bunch. It's
Now, I'm sorry, I missed this. I was turning pages and doing other stuff, but is it a compilation with other poets as well, or is this all you?
Yes.
So other
Yeah.
poets. Okay.
Yep.
So,
Same
and,
team, same
and, th
format.
but then just anybody that's worked on a good group project, there's got to be some, good. Hopefully, you all work together, but sometimes it might be good that you're in the middle of Kansas and they aren't. So,
Yeah, no, we worked really well together, Keela and Jeanette and I, and we're actually working on another project together right now, which is a poetry anthology, but it's a middle grade history book as well. So it's much bigger, much broader. And I can't talk about it much because it hasn't been announced, but
hadn't been announced yet. Well, cool.
yeah.
Well, that's something else. Other ideas, other things that you're working on besides stuff that we know is coming out. Anything else? That was a question from the question board here.
Yeah, that middle grade project, and it doesn't even have a date yet because we're still writing it. Um, got a few picture books on submission, one about an important figure who studied tornadoes and
Kansas, you don't know anything about that, so didn't have to go very far to
yeah,
research that. So yeah,
yeah.
I
So
will.
I have a
I will let
chapter book about a young girl on a farm that I would really love to sell, but it's not found its home yet. So
keep pushing. We could use that. 2026 is the year of the woman farmer, International Year of the Woman Farmer from the United Nations. So that's
this
it. And
is
I will let folks know that I so enjoy Lindsay's historic digging into these characters and uh, taking a biography and making it something that students can understand. I did provide her with the information on Andrew Moyer, the guy who brought penicillin to life. Everybody knows that Alexander Fleming made a batch and a half, but Moyer brought it to life in Peoria, Illinois, with corn-based products at the USDA Ag Research Station. So
that's so
that's
cool.
something you can share with your dad too. I got that corn, and they're doing research on it. And
Yeah.
the Corn Marketing Board supports that, and where that comes from. So I did share that. I share that story with a lot of authors. Nobody's picked it up yet, but just so you know, it could be out there. So, but with that, we just like looking at Lindsay's books and how she makes these unique ag stories come to life. And for those of you who are online, I just wanted to share a couple of things that we have that you can look to go right on with tomatoes on trial. Tomatoes on trial. We've got a tomato farm bite. We don't do a whole ag mag on tomatoes, but we've got a farm bite, just a little bit about tomatoes. And then Dixon Springs, we've got an actual farm where we interview the farmers who talk about what they do with it. Interestingly enough, the tomato is, let me get this straight here. Again, great fact matter in her book. The tomato is it is the state vegetable of New Jersey, as well as it is the state vegetable of Arkansas, but it's also the state fruit of Arkansas. So in
Yeah.
Illinois, we have our own farmers market stuff, but we also have our very own state symbols. And as you're getting ready to look at February for that, we've got our state symbol poster. We partnered with the Department of Natural Resources, more of the DNRE symbols on one side and the ag symbols on the other. We have our own state grain and our own state beans, so that'd be corn and soybeans. But we also have a vegetable, which is sweet corn, and our own snack food, which is popcorn. So
You're making me
not
hungry.
to mention, we do have a pie. So we have a state pie. It's pumpkin pie. So we've got all of those covered. A couple of other things to go along really well with this, right from our Ag in the Classroom, right from agintheclassroom.org, go to our lessons to talk about plant parts. We've got a great lesson called the plant part logic puzzle. And the cool part about this logic puzzle, you cut this out and then the students pull it together and they have to match a fruit with a fruit and a vegetable with a vegetable. We've got a great matching game that goes along with this. And then, of course, our specialty crop self-portrait, taking fruits and vegetables, specialty crop fruits and vegetables. You start with watermelon as your head, and then you add on your own fruits and vegetables to make your own self-portrait. So a number of activities that you can use, easily implement from an Ag in the Classroom standpoint. So I'll leave this open for questions for just one more time. But Lindsay's she's in the midst of she's got children as well, but they're busy with school and that kind of stuff. And she was able to do it before between seasons here. So as you head into track season and baseball season and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
excited that you were able to join us, folks. That you're joining us online. Wait for just a couple of minutes. I'll get this Zoom recording and I'll send the evaluation out as well. You'll have till Tuesday morning, bright and early, to get your submission in, to get your chance to win a copy of the book. But I got 5 of these books getting ready to go out to you guys to use for your upcoming debates. When you want to talk about tariffs in the Supreme Court, what's going on, making it in with that. Got a question. They just love where you get your ideas from. Thank you so much for joining us. And Lindsay, I really appreciate it. Look forward to getting Footprint as it comes on, and we might be doing another one of these as we talk about CO2 and where that comes from and how that comes on. So thank you very much to Lindsay Metcalf. Everybody go to your local bookstore, grab yourself a copy of Tomatoes on Trial. Your students will enjoy it, and there's great lessons to go along with this. You can make this a day-long, a week-long, heck, a month-long activity using Tomatoes on Trial. With that, thanks again, Lindsay. We really appreciate it. Everybody stay warm and safe this weekend as we go through this, and we're past the shortest days anymore, so it's getting close to spring. We'll be planting soon. So, and that means time for tornadoes in Kansas. So, do some more research. So, with that, thank you again, Lindsay, and everybody else. Be safe this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, I'll stop recording.